Today here on that Kilted Guy videos, we're going to talk about mistake number 2 that I see homeowners making and novices, and that includes handymen and so on, when they're doing their own drywall repairs. And I'm going to show you how not to make that mistake, because you don't have to do this. You don't have to make all this dust. We're going to show you the secret to minimizing your sanding and why a lot of sanding is not a good idea. We're going to do that right after this. Okay, welcome back to that Kilted Guy videos here on YouTube and at thatkiltedguy.com. Now, what we're going to cover today is a mistake that I see a lot of you make. And I've been doing this for 30 years. I've shown up on a lot of jobs where people have tried to do their own repairs, everything from handyman to painters and so on. And I see a lot of kind of common mistakes, so I'm covering those in a series. Now, if you haven't seen my number 1 video in this, you'll want to watch that for sure, because it ties right into this. And what we're going to talk about today is this problem of thinking that the solution to doing drywall is to lay it on heavy and it's okay to be messy and just sand it off. There's videos out there that actually show that. I'm probably going to show a little sample of that here, where this person thinks that the solution is just put it on rough, don't worry about getting it smooth, because hey, you can sand it down. Okay, here in a second I'm going to show you a sample of a video that I found years ago of a guy who was trying to do his own drywall repairs and show others how to do it. The problem is that he's showing a really poor way to do it. And what I'm trying to demonstrate here is exactly what I'm showing in this video, that sanding is not the secret to it. Now note that I'm not trying to put this guy down. Everybody that tries this and makes mistakes, I know that you're novices, you don't know what you're doing, you didn't get trained in this. So I'm just trying to show why it's a bad idea and why there's a lot of videos out there that are misleading you guys about the way to do this. So here we go.
I'm going to be careful not to over sand, but I'm going to walk my way around the circle here.
Okay, I like how he said I'm going to be careful not to over sand, and then the first thing you see is he over sanded. And that's partly because he's using a power sander like this, which is a bad idea, but it's also because of the way he coated it, and I'll explain that more here in a minute. Okay, one thing I want you to notice is that edgy sanding right now on the left. Notice how thick it is, and notice how he's not able to feather it out. And it did some damage to the paper, and that's because of leaving that thick outer edge.
So basically I've got this in the center. That job is done, ready for paint.
Okay, quick question everybody. Who out there thinks this is ready for paint? Comment down below, let me know, and if you think it's not, tell me why you think it's not. And now we'll get back to the video. To do these drywall repairs, you really don't want to put it on heavy and sand it down smooth. There's no need. You're just going to work yourself extra hard. You're going to get a lower quality job, and you're going to probably damage your surface. We're going to show you why with this little demonstration right here. I put it on here, as you can see in this picture. It's pretty rough. I see work like this fairly often because you guys don't know the secret to getting it on here smooth. And in my video number 1, I talk about how to almost eliminate sanding. So be sure and watch that. I'll put that link at the end of this video and down in the description, along with a bunch of other good information. So what I'm going to do here today is demonstrate to you why you don't want to do it that way. And then in a separate video, I'm going to demonstrate the right way to sand things, the right tools to use, the right techniques, and why it matters. And if you understand those techniques, you're going to really simplify the amount of work you have to do. If you do this stuff right, you should barely need to sand. And if you know anything about drywall, it's dusty. But you can cut that down a lot, especially when you're just doing a repair like this. All right, the first thing everybody does is they put their mud on, and they put it on kind of heavy, and then they grab a sanding sponge. Now, first of all, I use sanding sponges a lot, but they have their time and place, and honestly, this isn't really the best thing to sand this with, but it will work on smaller areas. And again, I'm going to explain more of that in the separate sanding video, why certain tools make a better choice for certain applications. But for right now, we're just going to kind of demonstrate why this doesn't work really well. So you get your mud on there nice and heavy, you get your sanding sponge out, and you just start sanding, and it works pretty decent. You can see it's starting to smooth it out, but you're making an awful lot of dust. Normally when I do a repair like that, I would have almost no sanding. And again, I cover that in the video number 1. But the other thing I've seen is, I've seen a number of videos on this actually where guys get out power sanders. Now, I've got a power sander, but it's specifically for drywall, and you'll probably see a little thumbnail here where I show you how I demonstrated how well that works, but it needs to be the right kind of sander. So if you try and power sand with this, it's more likely to do some damage. But here's the other problem that you guys have with sanding is you often use the green label all-purpose. I'm using the +3. Now, if you use the +3 as a top coat, it sands so much easier, you're less likely to do some damage. But if you use hot mud especially, or you use green label, hot mud sands really hard. The green label all-purpose sands a little bit easier, and the +3 sands almost like butter. So if you get the green label or the all-purpose and you get out your power sander, let's try that. We got an edge here, so let's try sanding that down. Okay, see, we got through it, but the problem is it's the structure of the edge, basically. When an edge goes over and drops off like that because you didn't feather it, which I teach in that other video, you have to sand it more and more aggressively, so you end up doing some damage to the outer surface. Now, sanding too much is not good for several reasons. If you look at this picture here, this is a job I just recently finished where they wanted it smooth, but it was level 4 smooth. So that doesn't require skim coating and sanding. They just wanted to do all the finish work, do all the repairs, and sand it down to where it's fairly smooth. Now, when you do that, you see all this fuzzy stuff here, all that fuzzy stuff showing off to the side of the drywall mud. That's the nap. It's the nap of the paper coming out because you've over sanded, because you have to. Whenever you're sanding drywall mud, it's so much softer and you have to extend it onto the paper a little bit. You're going to raise the nap of the paper. Now, if you're trying to get a smooth finish, that's going to show through. But in this case, it's considered level 4, so the painters can take care of it with some paint stipple and flat paint, and it looks just fine. That's what was already on the job. I was just repairing it. So you don't want to sand onto the paper any more than you have to. And when you leave these abrupt edges, it forces you to. If you learn to feather edge it, like again in that first video, you'll have hardly any edge out here. Therefore, you'll have very little sanding to do. This is about all you have to do on sanding when you have it coated right. That's literally it. And then on the middle, there's usually a little bit to sand. And again, I'm going to cover that in the next video. So I'm going to try and put these out kind of back to back. So be sure and watch that next video and you'll see why there's certain edges that sand a lot easier, certain edges that sand harder. And there's tricks and techniques. It's not just grab a sanding sponge and go to town on it. So let's kind of finish this up here. Okay, so we basically can sand it down fairly smooth, even if we put it on rough. But again, the problem with this is the damage you'll do to the outer part, the amount of dust you're gonna make versus doing it right. You're gonna have 10 times less dust. And honestly, if this area is a bigger patch and you try and sand it with these little sanding sponges, it's not going to do a very good job, and I'm gonna explain that more in the next video. So check that next video out to learn how to sand better. And we're gonna have a continuing part to this mistakes that novices make series. So check out the whole series and you guys will learn how to do this so much easier. It'll save you a lot of time and give you a better job. Okay, and coming up on that next video, we're gonna discuss some of these options right here. These are just some of my sanding tools: sanding sponge, hand sander, circular sander that has a sponge backing. We have the standard pad sander. This one's Velcro. The old school pad sander, non-Velcro. And we even have this nifty little triangle sander. And I'll tell you what all these do on the next video. And we really appreciate your comment. Tell me what you think about this. Did this help you out? And if you like that information, check out our description down below. Be sure and give us a thumbs up. And hey, if you feel like this video helped you out and you want to help us put out more videos, consider joining us on Patreon. There's a link in the description. That's where our most loyal fans come. We put out some insider information, early releases, and you can get more support there than you can in the comments. Thanks a lot, everybody, and I will catch you on the next video.